there are, it's said 1,000 times, there are no 6-week bulks. There's no 6-month bulks even. You got to invest in it, especially when you've got a slight frame like me. You're lanky, you're gangly. I'm made for running, man. My Achilles tendon is like a damn spring. All I've got to do is walk, and I've got enough energy in there to fucking set off a rocket. I'm made for running, but I hate running. My legs take so much effort to grow.
Hello friends, we're back. The voice you just heard was Morgan of Vegan Muscle Coach. Pretty similar name, pretty similar guy. We had a very cool discussion and I wanted to share it with you. It's more conversational. We had some great feedback from the last episode with Anastasia, a lot more informational, covered a lot of massive topics. It's very dense. Please go back and listen to that one. I'm sure you'll take away some goodies from it. But this discussion here, as I said, a little more conversational, a little more relaxed. I just want to get Morgan on just to have a general chat. He's a guy who's very similar to myself. He's a coach for vegans, specifically for muscle gain and fat loss. And I guess one of the things I love the most about the connectivity of the world these days is the ability to find other like-minded individuals just like yourself that are into the same things. And it might be something super niche, such as building muscle and fat loss for vegans, which is starting to become more prominent, but it's still it's a small industry in the grand scheme of things. If we're looking at the whole industry of fitness, and then we're looking at the whole world, it's such a small little niche sort of topic. So it's so cool to be able to connect with guys like Morgan, very similar to myself, and probably very similar to a lot of you guys listening. This discussion is just chatting about Morgan's journey, discussing bullying in high school and how that's had its effects on his mental health and his well-being going forward, and how he found solace in the weight room, how he was able to develop his body and design the life that he wants to live. So it's a super cool discussion. I think you'll take some good stuff away from it as well. If not, just a good thing to have on the background while you're doing your meal prep for the week or going for a big long walk and getting those steps in. And so I'll leave it at that, guys. I hope you're well. I hope you are safe. I hope you're training hard and eating all them plants. This is episode 17 with Morgan from Vegan Muscle Coach. You are listening to the Vegan Body Coach podcast, all about optimizing your strength, fitness, and physique through a plant-focused diet. My name is Jackson Burton, and I'm a nutrition and training coach for vegans, the plant-centric, and plant-curious. I'm sitting down with athletes, experts, and influencers around the world to inspire you to create your best vegan body yet. So, Vegan Body Coach family, welcome back to another episode. Today, we have a special guest all the way from Barry in Wales.
You got it right.
That's right, I got it, man. Morgan from Vegan Muscle Coach, which I have to say is slightly better name than I have, but we'll roll with it. It's a nice little collab, Vegan Muscle Coach, Vegan Body Coach.
It is.
How you doing today, Morgan?
I'm doing great, mate. Even better to be on this podcast, I gotta say.
Absolutely, brother. And I guess today I wanted to just run through and for the listeners, like I told you, I don't have a script for this one. Usually I have a bit of a run sheet going on, but I just want to have a chat, man. I just want to have a bit of a yarn about your journey and what you're doing, and you're doing some cool things and very in line with, I think, this community and what we're all about. And so, hey, man, why don't we wind it back and sort of kick it off with your journey, sort of, what sparked you to get into, I guess, veganism and training and things like that.
For sure. Let's rock and roll, man. So,
yeah.
God, where do we begin? Where do we begin on this journey?
How far do you want to go back is the question.
How far do you want to go back? To conceivance? All the way back to there?
Yeah.
It started way back when. No.
Take it back to the womb.
I guess. So how does this figure out? How does this pan out? So I guess what I do now is, I'm a firefighter first and foremost. And then I'm an online coach on the side, helping people with their fitness. Thankfully, the job affords me the luxury of being able to offer the time in the service that I do, in kind of the quantity that I do, thankfully, with the shift pattern. It can lends itself very favorably. I guess, when did I stumble upon fitness? It goes back to school. And this is something I didn't really make the connection with until I kind of started putting together some material for the kind of the Vegan Muscle Coach launch with the video, I started working with the videographer, Harry. And so we were kind of looking through my history, trying to make kind of connections and figure out why things have happened, why I've done what I've done. And it all kind of boils down to my less than nice experience in school with other people. I was bullied a fair bit. And to anyone who's been bullied in school, it's bloody awful. With that, I think everyone understands how helpless you feel, not being able to rise against. And I was a weedy bugger in school. I was a really late bloomer, really weedy. I mean, I'm only just starting to grow facial hair, and this mustache has taken about 10 months. This was preparation from the end of last November to prepare for this one, and it's only coming through. That's how weedy I was. So I wasn't really able to do anything about it, and it's just kind of a war of attrition in school. I guess it wasn't, in terms of bullying, I guess I had it easy when it comes to bullying, because there are some horror stories out there for sure, but it did get me down. It did take me to some very bad places, and kind of I needed an outlet with which to push this energy I couldn't otherwise exert onto the bullies because I was a weedy bugger. So I kind of started investing it into the gym. For years and years without any success, because I was just one of the biggest bros you can imagine for about 7 or 8 years. But it was still an outlet for my energy anyway. And I guess I kind of started to take it a little more seriously towards the end of university, and I wanted to kind of push my knowledge with it a little bit. And so I reached out to Revive Stronger, Steve and Pascal, as it were at the time, just the two of them. And I started getting coached by Pascal. And the kind of connection and the relationship we developed during that coaching was great. And the impact he had on me and how he kind of helped me through everything, taught me how to do things, took me to my kind of my bodybuilding show last year. The connection we formed was fantastic. And it's something that I really resonated with and wanted to give back to other people. So I started kind of coaching during my prep last year. There was a guy in the gym who I recognized as being in a very similar situation to me, when you kind of get past that newbie phase and you've got to kind of start paying attention to what you're doing. You can't just make gains anymore. I recognized that, and I kind of just reached out and I said, I was training, and it kind of went from there. I offered to coach him, pass on what I'd learned kind of from Pascal, and it worked wonders. And it's kind of just blossomed from there, really. Met Harry Facey, maybe 3, 4, 5 months. 5 months ago, we started putting together kind of materials for Vegan Muscle Coach, and this is where we are today. So it all kind of stems rather bittersweetly from my bullying experience in school. Yeah. It's a very interesting journey for sure. I mean, I feel like I'm only just kind of starting to come out of myself a bit. It really did. It knocked me back an awful lot in school. It really, because in primary school, in a kind of infant school, I was a regular kind of in the performances, like the Christmas shows and the kind of summer shows. I was always, my hand was up straight away, always to be the main act. It didn't faze me at all. Being up on stage, being in front of fucking parents, kids, whatever. Yeah. I loved it. Blossomed off it, and then come secondary school, everything changes. The dynamic completely changes. If you find anyone who's just a slightly bit different outside of the norm, right, we're having him for dinner every fucking day until we break him. And they did, unfortunately. They kind of really, really pushed me back into my shell. And this is something I'm only starting to realize today, is that I was so kind of oppressed in that way, kind of who I am, kind of wanting to help people. I didn't really understand this is what I wanted until very recently. And so I'm only just starting to come out into who I actually am, I think, as a result of coaching people, helping people in certain ways. But all of it has been stemmed from that lovely group of individuals in school who had nothing better to do than to push someone else down. But I thank them. Totally. I thank them. If you're watching this, I thank you very much, because I'm in the situation I am now, and I couldn't be here without you. Sounds twisted and fucked up, but it's the truth.
Yeah. I think it's very it's one of those like bittersweet things, right? Like you said, it's a case of, I think for a lot of people, they experience some kind of oppression in their early years, and but who knows where that's led them, those experiences and those troubles and those, obstacles they've had to overcome and get through. And then, potentially you might not have wound up in the spot you are now, helping other people and doing what you're doing now, if you didn't have those formative years of sort of oppression going on. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter what level of bullying you get, it affects everybody, and it affects everybody on a deep level. So much so that, like you said, you're only sort of just finding yourself now and finding your identity. I think that's true for so many people, especially in their 20s, is that it takes so long for them to finally come through and start to potentially, work on themselves on a deeper level and think back to, like, what are some of the reasons why I am, acting the way I'm doing now, or what are some of the hang-ups I have, where are these stemming from, and kind of working through those processes. And obviously, there's a huge need for people to be willing to go and seek professional help for these things, so they can work through these issues, right? Because then they can live their fullest life. Once they've realized these things and working through them, they can realize the potential that they have to help other people, or to follow that dream or that passion they've wanted to. So that's a pretty incredible story, my man. So. And I'm interested to know actually how you came across Revive Stronger, because you said you started off a bit more in the training from a bro sense. To come across Revive Stronger is actually, I guess, quite fortunate for you, because they do follow a very evidence-based practice, and a very I guess. They have a lot of integrity in what they do. So I guess, that's a pretty cool thing to you to come across. How did you come across those guys?
So I'm sure there was an article I read on Renaissance periodization, actually. That was it.
Oh, cool.
RP is
Great.
what led me down this route.
There you go.
It was kind of Mike Israel's detailing of kind of MRV, maximum recoverable volumes, how to have to taper your volume up, how to deload, and kind of when I reading this article, I was like, holy shit, what is this? Like a treasure trove of information. I started applying it myself. In fairness, when I started working with Pascal and Steve, I was kind of doing what they were prescribing me as well. But it's just having that reassurance, someone to take that kind of thought process away from you. It sounds lazy to not have to think about your own training, but Christ, we've got lives to live as well. And you can really get wound up in the minutiae. Just handing it over to someone else does wonders for you, I find. So it was through Renaissance periodization that I found Steve, awesome. Through Revive Stronger on Instagram. Just loved his approach, loved who he was. It came across very obviously on his Instagram that this is Steve Hall. It's not some persona he's putting on, and that's important.
So
resonate
true.
with someone for who they are, and it's easy to tell, I think, quite quickly, who you see or who you perceive is or isn't who they actually are, and that came across really quickly with Steve. So I investigated, applied, and then Pascal and I worked together for about 18 months. Then fabulous stuff.
Still working together now?
No. So we, after the show, he coached me through the kind of recovery period after the show, and then I wanted to give it a go for myself. Then, so for the past year or so, I've been training independently. I guess I've been having some success for sure. I mean, I'm the heaviest and strongest I've been, so I think that's a good sign. But I've working with Cody now from N1 training.
Okay. Cool.
So and again, the reason I get reached out again for a coach is because you get to that stage where you think, Christ, what am I doing? Is it working? Should I be doing something else? Oh my God. And then the second you offload that stress to someone else, it's just like, whew, you can get back to living again.
Yeah. I think you brought up some good points though about, persona, and I think, choosing someone to coach you, or even to listen to, or to, guide you, that is real, authentic, they're completely themselves, but also you can kind of see a bit of yourself in them. You know what I mean? Like you were discussing, with one of the guys that you're training in the gym now, or even the people that you're sort of marketing to within your business. They're much more, I guess they probably see a lot of themselves in you, very, it's almost like people love to relate to the person they're working with, right? And if they can, they're most likely not going to sign up to the most jacked, huge IFBB steroid bodybuilder, because it's so far flung from where they are currently in their position in life, right? Whereas they might work, with someone like yourself who, isn't that huge dude, but has the knowledge base and has a journey to show and has experience in the industry themselves. And, has shown that, hey, look, I've come from here and I've gone to there. We can go through this journey together as well. I think that's super cool. And it's sort of, it's so important to have that, like you have on your Instagram, man. It's like that, the persona, the personality is just being you completely. And it's so amazing for, it's amazing that you can do that now, considering, your history with bullying and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to go back, my man, to, when you did start in the gym, what was the goal there, bro?
Interesting one. It was a New Year's resolution, and I know they're sacrilege when it comes to the gym. We're all anticipating the New Year's resolutionists to start overhauling on, the 2nd January 1st comes along. But it was actually a New Year's resolution. Probably one of the best ones I've ever made. So me and my friend Lloyd, shout outs to Lloyd if he's watching this.
Yeah, Lloyd.
A homie from way back. We started training together, and I guess subconsciously the goal was I'm going to put on a bit of size and I'm going to show these dudes what for. And that never happens, because you don't just wake up looking like Ronnie Coleman the next day, do you? That's what I would have loved to have happened, but unfortunately it didn't.
Yep.
And that was the ultimate goal, was just to get big and jacked. And we're still on that mission today, still trying to get there. But I think what you fall in love with is just, it's that daily fulfillment, that daily chance to feel like you've done something to better yourself. It's a very, very, whether you realize it or not, whether you realize it consciously or subconsciously, it is a chance to fulfill yourself on a daily basis. Just being able to, especially when you start tracking and you start progressing with your training. And I think that's what myself and a lot of people kind of gravitate towards, is that being able to look at the logbook and say, I'm better definitively today as a result of my efforts and my consistency over time. And it I think it does wonders for the mindset. It really does. I can remember periods during my prep where kind of all it was just preparing for this bodybuilding show. And even though I was suffering, immeasurably in terms of my energy, my cognition, my libido was all in the tank. Every day you're just like a step closer to this ultimate goal. And it's like, fucking yes, this is amazing. Yeah. This is amazing. So it is, I think, regardless of what you step into the gym for initially, you will eventually land on fulfillment being the ultimate driver.
Did you see, what did you see when you first started training, in terms of results? Was it quick? Was it slow? What was your experience there?
Fairly quick, I think, I think it's going to be for anyone. Results in the first kind of maybe 6 to 12 months, providing you're doing things relatively okay. You're not being a total idiot in the gym, which is hard to do in the newbie phase. But as long as you're doing things rather productively, I think within the first maybe 6 to 12 months, you're going to have some indication as to how far perhaps you can take your physique. I know there are dudes who, that just trained for 6 to 12 months and they're enormous. They're made for this shit. I think after my first 6 to 12 months, I had some idea that perhaps this wasn't going to be a career, But I think it's important to be honest with yourself in that fact as well. So progress within the first, early doors was sufficient enough. But we're still very much still on the journey to get into where to get into that Ronnie Coleman level that I was hoping for when I first stepped in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think everyone has those far-flung ideals about what's going to happen when they start training. And I remember buying my first tub of protein powder from the sports store, and I was like, this is it, man. This is the next step. I'm going to blow up, you know what I mean? But it's kind of I think, you have to allow that newbie phase to take form in whatever form it takes. And, most people are going to, like you said, they're going to grow off, such little amount of training, and whether they're doing it by the book or not, they're just, as long as they're providing some kind of stimulus, they're going to grow. But I think, that's generally what keeps people there, right? Is they need that initial response, that initial results to see, okay, I'm actually, the effort I'm putting in is actually giving me a return. But then I think what keeps you in it long term is potentially, like you said, is that journey, right? It's that kind of daily struggle and that daily, especially if you're tracking stuff, like you said, you can see the results happening on a week by week, month by month basis, as opposed to now, you might not be seeing those, huge physique changes over time. I think you fall in love with the process more so than anything.
Absolutely.
But it is, I think for a lot of people it is tough because they may not respond as quickly as the magazines told them, or, the guy on Instagram responded, because I think a lot of the time, like what we're seeing now is social media, and we're seeing the outliers, right? We're seeing someone who starts training. One, maybe they already have a phenomenal physique without even touching a weight, or two, they're just a really high responder to weight training, so that their physique blows up, and then people are going, okay, cool, I can do the same thing. It's like, well, no, the reason they've got 2 million followers is because they're an outlier genetically, right? So they've blown up to that stage really, really quickly and relatively easily in comparison to the average individual. But then, like, when you come to someone like myself, who, I've been toiling away at the weights for probably 9 to 10 years now. And you would think after 9 to 10 years, like if you were to tell me when I first started training, okay, at 10 years, this is what you're going to look like, I probably wouldn't have kept going, because it's like, really, that's it? Like, and it's because, you can do everything right, but you're only going to respond as fast as your body wants to respond, right? And I think everyone's going to be so individual in that sense. So there has to be some kind of, I guess, motivating underlying factor that's more than just a extrinsic value, like an extrinsic goal of I want to get to this certain amount of muscle mass. So like for yourself, you said you're still working on that goal to build muscle, but do you think, like, what would be the reasons that keep you in it aside from that, like, outcome goal? Like, again, what is it about the weight training?
I don't know, man. I don't. God, it's a great question. It really is. It's so kind of deeply wound into your fabrication that it's difficult to pull apart and make sense of why it is that you just love to lift weights repeatedly in a very strange format. It's very, very interesting. I think go on.
I was going to say, I think for a lot of people that look from the outside, see people lifting weights, and it, like you said, it looks like relatively boring. You're just doing the same thing repeatedly over time. But I think for some of us, like yourself and potentially myself, I think we're on the same sort of wavelength there. It's just you fall in love with that process.
Yeah, I think I love the way a body looks, in stage condition. I think it just does it for me, in some sort of way, whatever way it is. It keeps me coming back. Dude, I don't know. Yeah. This is a question you need when you're like tripping on DMT. This is something you need to like go someplace to find out. You'll have this revelation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, you can think about it next time, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
When you take your next hit.
Yeah, yeah. I'll hit you up for that next podcast. Like mid.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to go back though, man. Were you like? Let's talk about the whole vegan thing, man. Like, where did that spark start for you, bro?
Oh, that's cool, man. So, let's think. Oh, I don't know where it stemmed from. I'd stumbled across Vegan Gains on YouTube. Back when he was a little more, a loose cannon, which I think kind of drew me to him. I know he's settled down a bit now. I love Vegan Gains, I really do. I know he's got his ways, but he does it for me. And back in the day, something connected when I started watching his videos. And it's like, what I'm doing doesn't really feel right. But nonetheless, I carried on doing it anyway. I remember one meal in particular. I was sitting there. I was on this kind of, meal before bed steak hype. I was having this steak and his mushrooms and and I had a Vegan Gains video on. I was like, what am I doing? What am I actually doing right now? What the fuck? Like, there was a click, and it was an overnight thing. Overnight, I guess I had whey protein in the cupboard, which I kind of went through first of all. But the fridge was, well, it wasn't my fridge at the time, so I was kind of shopping for myself. So my overnight, I just kind of changed again, apart from the whey. And I don't know where that initial spark came from, but it was at this Vegan Gains moment at this very particular moment in time, and ever since, I feel much more at ease with myself. I do. I think I was ignoring the conflict that I was going through when I was watching the videos and looking down at my plate. It's much, much easier to ignore it. But you just got to be honest with yourself and be like, fuck me, dude, this just isn't right. This is not right. And yeah, drop the hammer overnight and never look back.
Wow. I think there's often there's a disconnect between what rationally, like this is what we talked about with Danny on the last podcast. He talked about the fact that we rationally know something to be true, but then emotionally we make a different decision. And there's often that disconnect. Even if we know something is maybe morally wrong thing to do, emotionally we'll keep making that decision. It sounds to be like that might have been the case for you while you're watching these vegan gains videos.
Absolutely.
I haven't actually like ever watched a video of his. I mean, I remember him being kind of like, I guess used as like a debunker, a debunking video or like a mocking video in other YouTube videos they used to watch back in the day. But was he like, what was he promoting specifically? Was it more fitness based, or was it like animal welfare stuff, or what was he sort of what was he promoting that you were watching?
He was exposing the controversy, and I remember a conversation I had in particular. It was at a friend's barbecue, and she was vegan, and the topic came up, kind of, why she's vegan and why perhaps we should all be. And I said, yep, straight up, I can't win against this. I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I can't argue against it. There is no moral path with which you can escape a vegan questioning, and it's true. It's true, man. Like you say, there's an unfortunate disconnect, which again seems it's so again interwoven into society. It's difficult to break, but yeah, it's I've not looked back. But Vegan Gains at the time was kind of he was exposing the controversy, and I kind of liked how he was having debates with people and kind of discussions, and in every question that was fired his way. Nope. And it made sense. Yeah. I love that approach. I love, I'm big on kind of, I love the Joey Carb Strong Street debates as well. And Humane Hancock is another good one. Earthling Ed. And
of course,
again, they've all got different approaches as well, which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were with V-Gang for about, I think maybe 3 or 4 years now. I've been in the V-Gang.
That's awesome, man. So, a lot of your training age has been on a vegan diet.
Yeah.
Did you see any kind of changes as soon as you made that transition? Because you were obviously training at that time.
In fairness, I didn't notice all that much. I've always had an issue with I suffered from acne terribly as a kid, and there was always a connection between dairy and acne. But I guess
Did you see that clear up?
Yeah. When I did remove it, but again, being a kid, I didn't want to, because I remember again back in the bro days, I'd finish a workout sesh, like a litre of chocolate milk, then in a carton straight down the hatch, because because you have to do it because the internet says so. So didn't make the connection. And I think at the time when I went vegan, I was quite attentive to my nutrition anyway. I was making sure I wasn't having that much animal product in my diet, compared to probably a lot of the population. I was having an awful lot of eggs, though, I'll be fair. Lots of eggs. But I think I was attentive enough to not have this kind of huge turnaround in terms. And, naturally, when you make the switch to, I think, a plant-based diet, you have to take a little more care of your nutrition. You have to be a little more attentive to it. So I think when a lot of people do transition, who perhaps are living on a, maybe aren't into fitness, they're not into taking care of themselves all that much, when they suddenly have to start thinking outside of the box and putting some more grains and colours on their plates, naturally, I think a lot of people are going to feel a little more energized, because suddenly there are more nutrients and vitamins and minerals coming in. But I think perhaps a lot of these stories of people switching and, oh my God, I can suddenly run 1,000,000 miles. I think they may be a bit far-fetched and maybe a bit, not pushing of the message, but I understand why they're doing it, because they want more people to come aboard. But I don't think there is perhaps as sincere as a lot of people make them out to be. Like athletes. I think when a lot of athletes say, I went plant-based and it changed my life, it changed my performance, I'm thinking, did it really? Yeah. Because I'm sure you had a crackpot team of nutritionists behind you when you were eating meat. I'm sure they were taking care of your diet before you made the switch. Yeah, just my 2 cents, but
oh, dude, I'm on board with that 100%. It's like we talked about on the most recent podcast in relation to we want all the ducks in the row. We want to be everything to be benefiting us, benefiting the movement or the lifestyle or whatever. But you don't need to, maybe extrapolate these things further and say, hey, look, my recovery is, way better, or like I gained 5 kilos more muscle, or I put 10 kilos on my bench press. It's like, well, we don't really need to like be, pushing this, this needle out so far in terms of what we're promoting, because there's so many other areas that there's a good enough reason to eat this way anyway without having to extrapolate these ideas further.
And perhaps ideas that are just as important, like the ethical side of things. I've very much taken a step away from the nutritional side of things. If people want to argue that, okay, have fun. I'm not getting involved in this. If you want to bring up ethics, totally. Let's fucking dance, my friend, because I'm going to town on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, man. I think I totally get it though, because there is, there's a huge proportion of the population who, potentially wouldn't be like yourself at that barbecue and saying, hey, look, I agree with you. Like, I don't actually have a good reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like, it's just a disconnect. A lot of people won't be able to make that internal conscious decision to, I guess, humble themselves and agree that they're not doing things correctly. But they may be able to go, hey, look, well, maybe I could improve my performance if I go vegan, or maybe I could improve my health. And it may not be, there may be truth to some of that, because they're potentially eating a traditional Western diet that is predominantly processed and void of nutrients. Perhaps if they went into a more whole food plant-based diet, they would improve their performance and they would improve their recovery times, but, I guess it gets them through the door and maybe starts to open them up to, seeing things from a different perspective, from the ethical side and from the environmental side as well.
Yeah. Again, these are conversations that we can have inside of the vegan bubble. I'm not going to criticize people for saying, my performance review improved by 200%. I'm not going to have a go with them.
Yeah,
it's just these are kind of internal dialogues, which I think are quite interesting, that we can kind of have in terms of which is the best way to push the message, perhaps.
Yeah, I think the transitioning side of the whole thing is super important, and I think it's always interesting to talk to someone like yourself who sort of went and did it overnight, but you're already invested in health and fitness, so you probably had a decent understanding of like, okay, what do I need to do to make sure I'm still getting what I want for my training, right?
Yes.
For my nutrition. I think for a lot of people who transition, it's this period of like unknowing, right? They transition maybe through an ethical reason or environmental reason, but without kind of that educational aspect, which I'm always interested to obviously that's why a lot of people are in the field we're in, is to help people, regain their health on a vegan diet, or ensure that they're getting the optimal intake of nutrients on a vegan diet. But for a lot of people, they probably don't have that educational side. When they transition to know, okay, I need to, supplement with B12. I need to do these other things. Did you have any kind of educational aspect that you went through aside from, say, watching Vegan Games? Was there other things that you sort of invested time into to ensure you're doing things the right way on a plant-only diet?
Yeah, I guess I kind of did a fair bit of research kind of whilst I was vegan gainsing it up. I was going through kind of articles and posts and kind of really trying to understand what it is you need, what perhaps you might be deficient in. And you're right. I think we forget that we are in this niche in fitness and veganism. I'm not sure. I'd love to see kind of percentage-wise how many vegans would identify themselves as kind of caring or training, being involved in their fitness and nutrition. How many are actually interested in it? Because I'm sure a lot of people are more interested in it for the ethical side of things. And like you say, that's when the topic of education comes up in terms of these deficiencies, and they might become prevalent. I have lots of conversations with vegan friends who I just presume it's common knowledge, and I start questioning them about their do you supplement this? Do you supplement this? Are you aware of this? No. And it's like, what? How long have you been vegan and you've not been you're not considered? It's very, very interesting point that actually that perhaps there aren't as many vegan fitness enthusiasts as we perhaps want to believe there are.
Yeah. I think maybe by nature of someone, I don't know, it depends on what area, what angle they're coming from. Like, I think for a lot of people who go vegan, it is for the ethical side, but then there's a lot of people who do it perhaps as a way to improve their health or to include more plants in their diet or whatever the case may be. If it's that side, they're going to be a little more health conscious and they're likely going to be active, and they might be, runners, or they might just be doing daily walks, or they might be in the gym or whatever the case may be. But there's probably, a lot less people like us that are like vegan, but also very interested in the intricacies of training and muscle growth and things like that. Although that is definitely growing because, with the clients I'm working with and the amount of Instagram profiles and businesses coming out that are in relation to, physique change as a vegan, it's definitely, it's a very, very big growing industry for sure. Yeah. So for yourself, Morgan, like what's the big things you're working on now, bro, training wise? So, I know that for yourself, like you said, you're a weedy kid growing up, obviously a taller, leaner guy. What has been your experience with training with that kind of physique? I know it's one of the harder physiques to work with, in terms of, you've got these big goals of I want to put on as much muscle as I can. But naturally you're a weedy guy. So how do you get around that?
Cool. So understanding kind of what makes the body want to progress, how to do it, how to structure it, and to have patience as well. It's not, there are, it's said 1,000 times, there are no 6-week bulks. There's no 6-month bulks even. You got to invest in it, especially when you've got a slight frame like me. You're lanky, you're gangly. I'm made for running, man. My Achilles tendon is like a damn spring. All I've got to do is walk, and I've got enough energy in there to fucking set off a rocket. I'm made for running, but I hate running. So my legs take so much effort to grow, unfortunately. So something that's become more prominent now. Once you've got the basics down, once you understand how to progress, progressive overload, how to make your nutrition working with that as well, depending on whether you're looking to gain or lose weight. Once you've got the basics down, I think a lot of people overlook training movements that they're comfortable with. Again, kind of a battle I've had over the past couple of months, being in lockdown and being confined to, in a very privileged position whereby I can train on my fire station. Going back to barbell squatting again, which is something I've avoided for years because it's just such an alien movement for me. It takes me about 10 minutes to get into the hole, and I'm focusing all the way down on just not collapsing over and crushing my spine. So it's about, I think, finding movements that you perhaps a little more structured for. Like for me, I'm very, very well made for deadlifting. The leg press is great for me as well because I struggle so much in the squat. I can kind of manipulate my variables around the setup in the leg press to kind of make it a little more comfortable for me. Same with the Smith machine squat I've utilized in the past as well, just to kind of manipulate the bar path, put my feet a little more further forward so I'm not having to kind of fold over as much. I can stay a little more upright. And on top of that, having patience is the number one thing. I think 95% of us who step foot in the gym aren't going to be kind of turning into aren't going to be in that genetic elite category, unfortunately, whereby you can just stare at a weight and grow muscle mass. You've got to commit for years, commit for long periods of time, and realize that, like the Godfather, Jeff Alberts, he's been in the game now for how many decades?
Yeah.
And look at the shape of the dude. He's invested time into this, and he looks insane. And he's healthy, and he's still training, probably just as hard with a little less volume as he was when he was a lot younger, because he's been smart about it. He's trained movements that he's comfortable with. He's periodized his nutrition in his training. And it's all basic stuff, man. It's all basic stuff. I know. I remember back in the day, like you say, you're walking out of your local supermarket with 2 tubs of protein. You think this is going to be it. I'm going to get through these 2 tubs, and that's it. I'm going to be the next Arnie. No. Those 2 tubs, in 20 years' time, they're not even going to be like a speck on the chart of your gains over the years. So be more like Jeff Alberts, man. Be more like Jeff. Be in tune with your body and realize that it's an investment. He says, he depositing the pennies in the bank each and every day. Penny, 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 penny. Before you know it, hopefully you look like Jeff Alberts.
Yeah. I think there's so much value there, dude, and there's so much value, I think, in it's always like that stimulus to fatigue ratio that Mike chats about quite a bit, in relation to, like you said, choosing exercises that are potentially going to be the most stimulus for you, but without a huge amount of fatigue. Like for yourself, doing a barbell squat, like you said, it's one that the positioning is not great for your limb lengths and the way you're put together. And it's potentially just going to create a lot more fatigue on your joints and connective tissues, and areas that aren't really conducive to huge hypertrophy, for example, like the lower back. Whereas you could do a leg press and get a huge amount of stimulus on the target muscle, which is the quads, and not have to ramp up so much fatigue from doing these squats just because you read, oh, I should do squats for legs. So and I think as a start, like we talked about before, all new people to the gym should start with those basic lifts and progress on those and get used to those. But over time, you can be like, well, maybe this isn't serving me now. Maybe I'm not made to squat. Like we were chatting about this the other day in the gym here, and some of our clients, they're literally just like, we watch them squat and we're like, you look like you're just in the most comfortable position right now. Like that just looks so tidy. Like I would love to know how you're feeling under that bar right now, because it's perfection. The way they squat, they're just made for it. The limb lengths are perfect. The femurs, the torso, everything's just in line. And they're just made for it. Other people, maybe like myself, I've got longer femurs and I'm a taller guy, pretty much like yourself, I think. And like I can squat well, but I'm never going to be strong on the squat because, like yourself, it's a long way down and it's a long way back up. But there's other exercises that we can, focus on and use to better our physique. I think it's a good point you bring up though about the time thing, man. I think it's so much. This whole thing is it's a long man's game. It's like I said to a client the other day. It's like watching paint dry, but it's just way slower. Like when you're trying to grow muscle, it's a very, very long process. But for someone like yourself, Morgan, I feel like, it's potentially even a longer process. And we often want the quick fix, and the quick fix is usually a diet, right? So if we want to suddenly see great results and know that we're making great progress, it's like, well, I'll just go into a cut and I'll shred off that body fat and I'll look lean and I'll look peeled and all these things, and I'll look great at the beach and people will comment on my physique. But if I actually want to realize my muscular potential long term, that's not where I should be sitting. And I've made this mistake my whole training career, is spending way too much time, way too lean. And I love, one of the biggest reasons I sort of follow Steve from Revive Stronger is because of his approach to gaining and his massing phases. I think he's done it really well, and he's sort of popularizing the necessity to maybe push body fat up a little bit faster, a little bit harder than is promoted. And even myself, like for a lot of people, I'll give them a very conservative approach to gaining in terms of rates of weight gain. But I think there is some benefit to gain a little faster and for longer periods of time. Have you been through some longer gaining phases yourself? And what has been your experience with rates of weight gain?
So this has been my longest ever, I think, in terms of productivity and length post-show. I think I've been tapering things back a little bit, but I was kind of 64 kilos on stage, and I got to 84 kind of maybe a few months ago. Oh my god,
that's huge.
Most again, longest I've committed and the most productive it's been, because it's just been constant fueling, constant, no breaks, no skipped meals, nothing left to chance, just kind of making sure you are just eating, obviously to within capacity of what your results require, but making sure that you are fueled all the time. And it's profited like nothing before. In the past, I've just, God, looking back, it's like no wonder shit wasn't working like it's supposed to. Just eating, having like a big kind of dirty McDonald's after you train, thinking, oh yeah, calories, man, just get those calories in me, and then kind of not eating anything for the rest of the day, wondering why training is shit the next day, and just repeating the cycle, not being conscious enough to know.
Yeah.
So being like aggressively consistent with your training and your nutrition, and like you say, pushing your body into areas that it's not, or that you're not comfortable to see it in, struggled massively post-show, struggled massively with my body composition and kind of my mental health as well. I know it's discussed all the time, kind of when you get to stage, maybe for the first time or maybe every time, you're in hopefully the best physical conditioning you're ever going to look, ever, until you do it again next to it, hopefully. And that's hard to step away from intentionally, to intentionally know that you've got to kind of unwind everything you've done in a perhaps quite an aggressive manner compared to how you got there, to see things just fizzling away. My God, I was a deflated man for many, many months. Thankfully, my partner did wonders for me. She really did. She kind of held my hand through the whole thing and made me realize that there is more to life than having a six-pack. But when you're there, when you're in the moment, man, in the moment, once you've stepped off stage, once that 10 minutes of glory is gone, it's a difficult period to come to terms with. Again, because you've committed so much time to getting to where you want to be. And this isn't just specific to bodybuilding. This is specific to weight training in general. You're committing a lot of time to your goal. So it's difficult to get, it's easy to get identified with what you're doing. Like, this is my identity. This is what I do. And for too long, I was caught up in that. It's important to realize that fitness should fit into your life. Your life shouldn't fit into fitness. And that, unfortunately, that was something that was going on with me. My relationship with food was hideous. I dread going out for meals. I'd have to have the same thing to eat every day because, God forbid, I see a fluctuation in the scale. So I guess in answer to your question, we've gone down the rabbit hole here. But
I love it.
It's, yes, for me, noticeably, this past year has been just consistent training, consistent nutrition, pushing my body beyond levels of fat, which I thought I'd be comfortable with, and that I'm not comfortable with still. I'm not comfortable with my body, but you realize that there is more to life than your abs. It's difficult to realize that there's more in the moment because, again, you're so invested in what you want. You're so invested in getting to this conditioning that you want for the summer or for the stage or whatever it is. But people, if you're listening, you got to make fitness work around your life. You can't make life work around fitness because you will wind up in an awful, awful place. You really will. You really must find fulfillment in other areas because there are more fulfilling things in life than having a six-pack. And I know it's boring and I know everyone says it all the time, but they say it because it's true, people. You've got to realize that fitness should fit around your life and it's not the other way. But in summation, eat lots and train hard, and that's the best thing I've done thus far to get to where I want to be.
Yeah. Oh, I think we're in a culture, man. We're in a society where image is valued, in such a misconstrued way. Like we value image so highly, to the point where, we all feel like, we don't, maybe people won't like us or they won't accept us, or we feel shame about the way we look because maybe we don't have that six-pack, or maybe we don't have the leanness of our favorite Instagram influencer, or whatever the case may be. And it is a case of, that's just put in our faces all of the time, and we have to constantly check ourselves and pull ourselves up on that and say, look, people are not going to give a damn whether you are, 6% body fat or you're 12% body fat. Like, people love you. If they're the type of people that are going to love you, they're going to love you for who you are no matter what, right? So, like, your progression towards your fitness goal or your physique goal, it needs to be more than just, hey, I'm trying to impress the dudes at the beach or the ladies in the club or whatever the case may be. It needs to be more than that, because that's, people just don't really care. You know what I mean? Like, as much as the media likes to tell us they do, and, that's all we see in marketing is the fact that, they'll like you more when you're leaner, or you'll look better, or, you'll feel better when you got less body fat, or, you'll get the better job, or whatever the case may be. It's just not reality, Man,
the media is dangerous stuff, man. This is probably a conversation for another one, but people.
Totally.
Unrealistic expectations are rife in the fitness industry. Well, in every industry, it would seem. But like you say, don't buy into the shit that you see posted around everywhere. It's there to sucker you in and to get you to buy. There's more. Again, people. There's more to life than abs. There's more to life to it. And like Jackson said, the people that like you for who you are the people that you're going to want to have hanging around. If you're hanging around people that are with you because you've got a six-pack, probably not the best people to be hanging around with.
Yeah. Pretty surface level stuff, eh? So for yourself, now that you have been through this, this competition season leading up to stepping on stage, was it bodybuilding division?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you had to get the legs out, you had to be dialed, shredded all around. Now that you've been through that process, you've stepped on stage, and like you said, there's such a huge investment in bodybuilding. Like it's a 24/7 thing, and then you get this fleeting moment on stage where you're at your absolute best, and then it's like, well, now we go back, and it's a huge investment, and it's a huge toll psychologically, like you've already discussed. Is this something you're wanting to go through again in the future? How was that experience for you? Do you feel like it's something you want to continue to do?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to do it again. Again, I don't identify as a bodybuilder, I guess, as such. It's very much a hobby as opposed to anything else. I guess I train like a bodybuilder. I train to grow, but stepping on stage again, it won't be. It'll just be for a bit of fun. Just to see where I've come again. Just I guess as a marker to visualize your progress. I'd definitely love to do it again. I definitely would. I think it teaches you a lot about fulfillment and how I think if you can apply yourself to meet the standards required for a bodybuilding show and go through the shit you got to go through to get there, if you can do a lot, you can do a lot. If you can set yourself a goal like that and have to chip away at yourself for days and weeks and months, and you can get to a stage with, bodybuilding level conditioning, you can probably apply yourself to a lot of things in life. I think it's a very, very powerful tool for teaching you, not just bodybuilding, for getting ready for any kind of, physical sport or any kind of competition or sport or events. It kind of teaches you how much you can do. If you want something hard enough, you can probably go out there and get it.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. What was the time scale it took to get to the stage for you?
About 20 weeks, 4, 8, 12, 16. Yeah, about 5 months it was.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was and it was good fun. I'd love to do it again. I'm itching to do it again, but I'm not in I want to push a little bit harder first with the growing.
Yeah, I think the process of, like, even for myself when I'm in a cut phase, like, it's horrible and you're suffering and you don't get to eat all the food you want to eat and you got low energy and things like this. There's something about that process, almost there's something about the suffering that is, for some reason, enjoyable. It's going through the journey and knowing that what you're doing is paying off, and knowing that you're trusting the process, and you're doing these daily steps that are going to lead to this result. I guess the tricky part comes when you are at such a lean level. It's almost like anything less than that is very hard to take mentally, and it takes, for myself when I'm in a much leaner state. Even if I just pull back a little bit from there and I put on a little bit of body fat, I feel like it's like this huge step backwards. And it takes me like multiple months to sit at that body fat to kind of, almost switch that mindset into, oh, this is actually okay now. This is my new normal. Like, I actually still feel really good and I'm really happy with my physique. And then you can start to, I guess, push that gaining phase a little bit further and kind of embrace the like I like to talk about embracing the fluff, like embracing the fluffiness of being in a mass gaining phase. But it does take that little transitioning period of course, you're not going to be, as happy with your physique at 8% body fat as you were at 5%. That's just the nature of how it is, because you've seen what you're capable of doing. But for yourself now, like, okay, so what kind of body fat percentage were you sitting at on on show day? Do you have any idea of what that was?
I don't know, man. Maybe like 6-ish. I probably could have gotten a little leaner, but maybe 6 or 7, perhaps. Yeah, around that area.
And now you've pushed up, a solid, 20 kilograms.
Yeah, so I'm probably like 15 to 20, probably closer to 20. You got the fancy scales which kind of guesstimate where you are, but my legs are a lot leaner than the midsection. The midsection's guilty as sin for carrying most of the juiciness.
It's just that's just the male physique, my man.
Unfortunately.
It's a shame, but yeah, it's just how it is, right? And yeah, I mean, I don't like to use body fat percentage a whole lot anyway, just because there's so many different ways that we measure it, so people have a skewed idea of what that percentage actually looks like on a physique. But I guess for the listeners, is a decent way of gauging like where you're at now and where you've come from, and the benefits of being in this longer term mass phase. Like, what has been a weekly sort of average weight gain for you? Do you have any idea of that?
That's a good one, actually. I guess it comes in waves. I think once you push calories up a bit, you will get a steep rise from what I've noticed anyway with myself, and then it kind of tapers off. Maybe very, very slowly. I guess I can see like an increase of a kilo or so very, very quickly after increasing calories, maybe by like 200, and then it will taper off. And I seem to ride out these kind of periods of maintaining after an increase for a fair while before I feel the need to kind of increase again. And I think there are a lot of markers to look for when it comes to increasing your calories. For myself, I've managed to make lots of progress kind of with that initial bump and then kind of maintaining. But things to look for, maybe like just kind of stagnating performance, maybe again a stagnating scale weight, as indicators of perhaps it's time to increase again. But for me, it's I see a steep rise and then just whoosh. But as long as my performance is moving in the right direction, and it's not painfully slow, it's probably a good indicator that something's going right somewhere.
Yeah, it seems to be the case that we've had a few guys this year that are really working on the gaining phase and putting time in there. And it seems to be the case that we'll make an increase in their caloric intake and they will gain for a little bit of time. Then they will plateau again. And that sort of stagnation of body weight gain, it tends to be just the natural adaptations in their unconscious activity per day. Without realizing that they've started ramping up energy expenditure. Just because their body's fighting to stay at homeostasis, it doesn't really want to get a whole lot bigger. No. So there's adaptive processes that go both ways, whether you're cutting or gaining. So, depending on how effective someone's adaptive processes are, they may, make a 200, 300 calorie jump, gain a little bit for a couple of weeks, and then stagnate again as their body ramps up energy expenditure even more to try and bring them back to homeostasis. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting to see that happen and to see some of our guys have to continuously walk their calories up to these what seem absurdly high calorie intakes, but that's just naturally what they're going to have to take in to ensure that they do continue to gain weight if they are committed to this process of putting on substantial amounts of muscle mass. And the key there is substantial, because I think for a lot of us, it's like, I'll do a little gain. And this is me. I'll do a little gaining phase. And before I know it, it's been 6 months and I've literally basically maintained my weight because I haven't committed to the process of actually committing to, okay, I need to achieve a monthly rate of weight gain. And if I'm not doing that, I need to commit to eating more. What would be your average day of eating at the moment, man? Do you want to run through just a quick run through of the kinds of foods you eat, and we can get a good idea of that and see how the listeners like that?
Yeah, sure. So I've kind of really gone back to, from how I work with my coach at the moment, he details a macro plan as opposed to a calorie goal, which is something I've not worked with before, actually. And it's kind of led me down this path to training with N1 and Cody's, because they do kind of go for maybe approaches that are not maybe standard or traditional for kind of the majority of the population. Different kind of training mechanisms, different kind of approaches and different phases of training. One of them being kind of a macro plan, kind of structured around a specific training time, kind of pulling carbs, things that we know, but perhaps kind of don't implement as strictly as we'd need to, but things like removing carbs completely from around your training window and then really loading them up then really loading them after, and then pulling them away again for the rest of the day. So I've really gone back to basics. It's been like rice cakes, protein shakes, making sure I got maybe a tidy multivitamin on hand, because at the moment I'm probably not getting as much greens and nutritious foods in as I probably should. But again, that's just because I'm trying to figure things out in terms of this macro kind of plan. So the morning is typically, at the moment, it's just like a protein kind of mug cake. You only use a little bit of water, protein powder in, mix that up, whack that in the microwave. You've got a nice, juicy, lovely cake. It's delicious. A handful of nuts, Same again then for meal 2, with a few more carbs, because I tend to train then after meal 2. After meal 3, it's kind of the same as meal 2. Then meal 4, that kind of pre-bed, tends to be a cooked meal. I make sure I try and get as much greens and kind of vegetables in there as possible. And I'm kind of manipulating my calories around training days as well at the moment. So kind of rest days, it's like maybe 200 or 300 below my training day calories. And again, something we've probably all been aware of for a lot of time now. But when it comes to things like, gaining, for majority of the population, they don't really want to fuck about with putting calories away on training days or not. They just want to just get on with it. So it's not a necessity for a lot of people. But again, probably makes sense. We're not training on a training day. Do we need that many calories? There's an argument for and against, I'm sure, in that field. In terms of our body will probably, again, make these micro adaptations, I guess, from day to day, depending on how much fuel you're giving it. I'm sure on a training day, you're going to be fidgeting a little bit more, probably because you've got these extra calories in on top of your training. So is it negated versus a non-training day? Probably, who knows? But these are things, it's the minutiae, isn't it? This is the kind of minutiae that perhaps you want to dive into eventually to see where maybe you can take your body. I'm sure that it gets to a place in most people's training career where the norm needs to be adapted a little bit. We need to kind of start paying attention to details a little bit more, perhaps like nutrient timing around your training window, perhaps like maybe pulling calories away from a training day to make sure they're going around on a non-training day, rather, to make sure they're being fueled on a training day. But at the moment, I'm kind of, I guess, going through a little experiment on myself to see if this degree of attention is going to manifest in anything. And it's been quite interesting so far.
Yeah, it's an interesting point around, I guess the calorie cycling type situation, because one of the things I've seen a lot of benefit from recently with myself and clients is the implementation of, I guess, a little more mindful eating practices, or, even going further into like intuitive eating practices, where we step away from calorie tracking in a maintenance or a gaining phase. And I've done this a lot myself, is like no tracking whatsoever, just keeping an idea of protein in my head. But what actually happens is this, because for such a long period of time, I've just tracked, specific daily calories every single day, and whether it was a high day, low day, like you've been talking about, or just a standard calorie intake per day over 7 days a week, so keeping it static. I've done that for multiple years, but over the last couple of years, been playing around with, hey, look, just eating how I feel and ensuring that I'm seeing the scale weight go up to some extent, and keeping an idea of daily protein intake. And the beauty of that is that there are these sort of natural responses to intake, right, in the body in terms of our energy expenditure, and how much we move and how much energy we have. And you'll definitely notice, like, when you step away from hitting specific daily numbers, no matter what, if you actually allow your body to go, hey, look, today I'm feeling a little bit more hungry for whatever reason. So maybe I will just eat, 200 to 300 calories more today. And potentially that day is, you've been slightly more active that day, or potentially the day before you've been slightly more active. So there's these natural responses and hunger hormones that are increasing hunger for that day or the day after to help you stay at homeostasis. And then vice versa, if you've had a really high day of calorie intake, there's in all likelihood, you're going to have a response in satiety hormones the next day to say, hey, look, you actually don't need to eat as much today. Or perhaps you'll increase your natural unconscious energy expenditure for the day. You'll fidget more. Maybe you'll just walk around a little bit more. You'll be more restless, and the energy expenditure will increase a little bit as well. So there's almost like these natural ebbs and flows of calorie intake based off daily activity, based off energy intake. And that happened quite naturally. And it takes a very long time to get to that point where you can sort of just be in tune, but it's a mindfulness based practice, right? Being in tune with, okay, am I hungry? Am I not? How active am I today? Did I blast past my 10,000 steps, or am I at like 3,000? All of these things come into it and kind of dictate, somebody's intake for the day. I really do enjoy that way of going about it. But then I think, for myself, there are periods where I do need to go back to more of a daily structured calorie tracking pattern. Otherwise, I can very easily go into a position where, like I said, I'm just maintaining and I'm no longer in a a direct gaining phase. But yeah, anyway, just a random little side tangent.
No,
there.
for sure. I think it's a great point. I think a lot of people may feel as though when they start tracking, it's almost this daunting prospect of, oh my God, is this something I'm going to have to do for the rest of my life? But you realize, you learn how to interpret your own satiety. You learn how to interpret when you're full, and kind of when these do, like you say, when these natural feelings of hunger do come around, you know when to satiate them and when to not to, perhaps. So it's certainly something you learn with over time. But I think if you're looking to get the most out of, especially a period of gaining, you want to make sure you're kind of like inundated with calories and nutrients as often as possible. And it's easy to perhaps, like you say, let that fall to the wayside and get a little bit complacent with things. Perhaps for a lot of people listening, if you are looking to take your gaining periods seriously, I think tracking is something which should be perhaps a little more prioritized than you might otherwise think. I certainly in the past, again, I think I've thought to myself, I don't need to track. I just need to smash a gallon of milk after a training session, and that's me sorted. When it's not me sorted in the slightest, because that was probably the only fucking calorie and protein intake I was getting for the day. Apart from picking, in the hours leading up to that training session. So there's certainly a skill that is acquired through tracking, but know that it's not something that you're going to have to do for the rest of your life, and it's probably going to teach you a lot about how to interpret your own satiety and your own needs along the way.
100%, man. So if yourself, you said you're outsourcing your programming at the moment. What is your training looking like, bro?
So we're going through a ascension phase at the moment, whereby we're kind of just looking to increase the top sets of our training, of our movements in a given training session. So in the squat, for example, I'm only training 4 days a week at the moment. In the squat, for example, again, we're working up to a top set, working at kind of a 10 RPE, and the goal is to kind of increment that slightly over the weeks as they progress. And working through with Cody now, he's teaching me how to interpret the results from this kind of ascension style training, interpret how my body responds, and then how to make decisions then going forward when moving into the next phase. So it's very different from what I've done in the past. The kind of, I guess, not traditional, but the volume approach that is perhaps used by a lot of individuals as they transition into tracking and progressing. I think people will naturally kind of gravitate towards perhaps Revive Stronger and Renaissance Periodization because they're such big names, and they're very easily accessible. Their kind of strategies are very easily accessible. So that kind of set by set progressions, knowing when to interpret, knowing when to add load, knowing when to add reps, when to add sets. It's quite a way off from that. It's again, the focus on the top set is not something I've done before. And it's interesting because, again, naturally dialing back the volume throughout a week gives you that luxury of being able to, let's go for it. Let's just fucking have it on this set. And it's quite nice. It is nice. It's nice to have a change. It's a change I've wanted to kind of implement for a while. I've been flirting with the idea of kind of moving into this kind of side of the coaching. You've got the volume side and you've got the intensity side. I'm sure you've seen it on Instagram, and there's this all the time. I've been firmly on this side for many, many years. So I wanted to try this bit, just to see,
man,
what's it all
totally
about. And it's not all about intensity over here, especially with N1. I know they go through certain different phases of training. It's not always about ascension. There's lots of volume training. There's lots of kind of pump training in there, I'm sure, as well. But it's kind of opening your mind up a little bit. I think a lot of us can perhaps get a little. We see this all the time, and it's far too easy to get caught up into one of these camps and start siding with it versus the other. But I think it's very, very favourable probably for a lot of people to float about in the middle and try both. Before you give yourself a solid opinion, at least give both a go. And I'm enjoying this at the moment. I really am. I didn't think I would. I didn't think I'd enjoy training with, max RPEs and trying to, beat your top set. I've always been kind of very, I guess traditional about it, adding sets, adding reps, adding load over time. But this is very refreshing at the moment. So it's a very different style of training, but learning lots.
So it'd be more like, hey, do your top set and then do you do back offs, or is it like, hey, look, I'll just do this top set and then I'm done and I go to my next exercise? Yeah,
so it's kind of, we're focusing on a compound, I guess, for each top set at the moment. So the squat, for example, is one, and then we've got I guess, supplementary movements. Like we're targeting the glutes then afterwards in a kind of a glute bridge. And then we're just some light quad work as well. But the majority of the emphasis at the moment is on progressing these top sets.
Yeah. So it's actually like a really, like you said, it's a very low volume approach to training, but it is refreshing in the sense that you're like going in and you're like, well, I don't have to do 6 sets of squats today or like 5 sets of leg press. It's like, I'm going in there, I'm going to do my warm-ups, I'm going to take every set really intentional, and then I'm just going to go all out as hard as I can on one set and maximize that response. And I think it's refreshing, man. And I think there's real validity to just having common ground, right? They always, we love to have opposing sides, and we love controversy, and we love to have the volume camp and the intensity camp. But there is just so much common ground there, and I think a lot of the time the opposition is in relation to a misunderstanding of like terms and a misunderstanding of what is really important for muscle growth, and sort of confusing different variables, and someone saying, hey, look, it only matters how much you lift on the bar, and then someone else saying, hey, look, it only matters how much volume you do over the week. It's like, well, it's really a merger of those two. We can't really just have one without the other. So I think there has to be a gray area. Like you said, for most people, it's finding in the middle. But yeah, I think keeping training fresh, changing up the way you do things, the method you're doing, there's real benefit to that for you, isn't there? And then you can sort of eke out the gains longer term, and try not to get too bored doing any one thing, and challenge yourself, right? And like you said, for yourself, it's also an educational process.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think a realization recently is if there's always more to learn, but it's kind of facing that thought that perhaps I don't know everything. It's very, very. It's an intimidating thought to question your own knowledge and think, God, I think it's where imposter syndrome starts to creep in. You think you have to know everything in order to be helpful in some way. It's something I struggle with a lot. But you'll never know everything. You'll never. But we know enough to help people. That's the important part. That's the part which matters the most. But imposter syndrome it's a bugger. It really is. But embrace it. Embrace the fact that you don't know everything, because it's an opportunity to learn more and improve your skills and improve what you can pass on to others as well.
I love that, man. Well, it's probably a really good place to wrap this one up, my man, and let you get on with your evening over in Wales, my man. So,
absolutely.
Hey, dude, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on and have a yarn and finally get to chat. And I think would be a great fit for an in-person convo at some stage, man. Yes. Hopefully, when I'm over in Wales, it'll be a great time.
Absolutely, mate. We'll have to do it. We've got some lovely vegan restaurants over here in Cardiff. It's fantastic, mate.
Perfect, man. We'll set it up. Training session, podcast, good feed.
Let's do it.
Fantastic, man. Well, do you want to quickly let our listeners where they can find you, the Vegan Muscle Coach?
The Vegan Muscle Coach can be found at vegan_muscle_coach at your favorite Instagram app on your phone. That's kind of where I'm the most active is on Instagram. I've got a few bits and pieces on Facebook. But if you want to find me, Vegan Muscle Coach, my name's Morgan. Hope to see you there soon.
Perfect. All right, guys. We'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for being on, my man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's I've enjoyed this very much.
There you have it, guys. Another one in the books. Morgan is a super cool guy, and I'm looking forward to catching up with him at some stage when I can get back on a flight to the UK, whenever that may be. But guys, we've got some options now, yeah? So if you're looking for fat loss coaching, muscle gain coaching, specifically for vegans, then you got a couple options. Myself, obviously, or you can look at Morgan, Vegan Muscle Coach. So a few different options there. We both do a similar thing in terms of, hey, look, doing a consultation with us, chatting about all your nutrition and health goals, and then we go ahead and set you up with a plan and weekly chickens from there on out. So it's more of a coaching relationship rather than just, attaining a meal plan and trying to stick to that, which most do not do. what we do is instead teach you, give you some education on why we're making these decisions, why we've set your macros like this, why we're getting you to eat these certain foods, and using that meal plan as a base, as an example of what you perhaps could have to meet those macronutrient and calorie targets, but not as something to be adhered to religiously. So we're giving you the autonomy within the coaching relationship, and that's how we get, the best results from people, is actually teaching them, educating them, and setting them up for success further down the road once the coaching ends. So that's a little spiel on coaching. If you do want to look into that, let us know. We'll have the links in the description for myself and for Morgan. And guys, lastly, if you want to recommend a guest for this podcast, this outro has turned into a mess. If you're wanting to recommend a guest for the podcast, I want to look out for someone who's in the endurance realm. So someone who's perhaps done ultra marathons or triathlons, Ironmans, things like that I can have a chat to about their nutritional protocols for long distance racing. Preferably, this would be someone who has an evidence-based mind. Perhaps they've done some study in the area, rather than someone who just competes and knows a little bit about running. I'd like to have a chat to someone about the evidence behind what they do, and how the plant-based diet is affecting the running, positives and negatives for it. So if you've got someone in mind, let me know. Tag me on Instagram, and I'd love to catch up with them and have a chat. We've got some more episodes on the way too, guys. Some new topics coming up that I can't wait to discuss and share with you, and hopefully, enlighten you with some new different perspectives on things in relation to body composition and health. So guys, that's it. That ramble over and done with. Have a phenomenal week, and I'll see you very soon. More plants, my friends.